Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the July 30th special meeting for the State Building Code Council. I'm your chair, Damon Doyle. If staff could please do the roll call. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Sorry, I had us muted.
That's okay.
Okay, now we'll start all over. Damon Doyle,
Here.
Shell Anderson,
Present.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Todd Bayreuther, Justin Burgo, Tom Handy,
Here.
Angela Hott,
Here.
Roger Haringa,
Here.
Matthew Hepner, Craig Holt, Ty Menser, Ben O'Mara,
Here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Dan Young.
Do we have a quorum?
Yeah, I can't.
I'm counting just a sec. We didn't have access to our drive, so we're kind of.
We have Justin Borco and the attendees. We just promoted him to panelist.
9. Yes, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any other attendees that would like to introduce themselves? Morning, Senator.
I'm Patrick Hanks with BIAW.
Morning, Patrick. Justin?
That was the visitor.
Oh. Senator Wilson.
Sorry, I made it in a little bit late for roll call, guys.
Okay, we got you on the list. Senator Wilson?
Yeah, I just wanted to let y'all so that the public knows that I'm on, and so is John. I see John Lovick's on.
Yes,
Our
John
names were
Levick is
called.
here.
Yes.
I also can't.
Thank you. Any other attendees? Todd, I see you're here. Micah.
Micah Chappelle, Technical Code Development Manager for Seattle's Department of Construction and Inspections.
Welcome aboard. Okay, see no other hands raised. Can I get a motion to review and approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
moved.
Angela.
Angela, thank you, Angela. Any comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, MVPE committee reports. Dustin, you did a very efficient job of rolling through our second half meeting on last week. Would you be willing to take the reins and see if we can expedite this process this morning?
We can definitely do that, but before we get rocking and rolling, we are having some technical difficulties with our servers here. The whole state of Washington is down, so I won't be able to pull up a document that we can edit. I'll be using the documents we have posted online, and if we need to make changes to those today, we'll have to take notes on what the changes need to be and make those changes after the meeting concludes here today.
Okay.
So everything we're working with is just going to be PDF, and so I won't be able to affect changes as the information I want to pass forward at the moment.
Okay.
So we're going to get into the MVPE committee reports, and we're going to start with the 2024 IMC existing amendments report.
Okay.
I will share this.
And Dustin, I think since you're going to be doing most of the commenting, you might want to switch over to your personal mic. You're kind of quiet on the conference room mic.
Gotcha. Let me run with this one a little, and then
All right, can I get a quick sound check? Just
That sounds, that's much, much better.
awesome. Is everybody in the room able to hear? Okay, awesome. So starting off with the 2024 IMC existing amendments report. Let me get my screen share going. And let me zoom this in for you guys. Oop, I didn't get it finalized. There we go. All right, so very similarly to the way I ran these in our committee meeting for the BFRW, as I run through these reports, we'll scroll through them. If anybody would like to stop and have additional input on a specific section, please raise your hand, and we can stop there. As far as the plan for running through these reports today, if the status quo of the code section is going to be maintained, I'm going to just scroll past. So anything that's tinted green should be, or I'm sorry, tinted blue should be moved through. And anything that's going to propose any sort of change or anything like that, we'll stop and I'll just kind of describe what we have going on in the report. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get jumping here. And it looks like the color here is not blue on the keep existing amendment, but I'll be rolling through and reading these as well. So if there's any place that anybody needs me to stop, please just raise the hand and I'll ask the staff here in the room. If you see a hand come up, just let me know because I'll be looking at a different screen. So with that, Roger.
I'm sorry, I was trying to time it. I have a question about item 2, failure to comply. So if you want to go through the scope first, go ahead.
Okay. Well, scope for the existing amendment in that section is to maintain all the amendments in there. And then that brings us to the stop work order failure to comply. And I believe it's the appropriate time, Roger.
Yeah, so I am curious why we are changing authority having jurisdiction, which I know is defined in the code, to code official.
Ben.
Yeah, I think that was the findings of the tag as well for both the IMC and IFGC. It says both of those changes to strike authority having jurisdiction and put in code official were made in 2021 code cycle. So those are both newer state amendments that were added. So and the action the tag recommended was to, for now, retain the amendment and look further at understanding the intent behind the change that was made in the last code cycle and potentially repealing it to match the model code, which would be consistent with the IBC and other codes.
Okay. I agree with, all right, let's flag it and take a look at it, but I'm curious why we would do that. So, okay, thank you.
And it looks like the other comment for this section shows pursue a code change to retain model code language for consistency. Is that a recommendation to kind of repeal this amendment?
To have someone
Make a proposal?
make a proposal to do
Okay.
that.
Angela?
Okay, so sorry. So the model code says authority having jurisdiction. Is that correct?
Yes, you see down here in the second
Right.
page here, authority having jurisdiction is struck.
Okay, so the state amendment was to change it to code official.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
All right, anything else on that one? All right, moving on. That finishes up that section for the stop work order. Brings us to chapter 2, definitions. And then the recommendation is to keep all the amendments in the definitions section. Chapter 3 for general regulations. In section 306.5 with a recommendation to delete the current amendment. And the rest of the amendments in chapter 3 are recommended to be retained. Brings us to chapter 4 for ventilation. Looks like on section 403.2.1, there's a recommendation to retain the amendment, but to integrate the model code language into the first sentence here. For section or table 403.3.1.1, recommendation to retain and integrate the new language. In section 407.1, recommendation to retain the amendment and add new ASHRAE 170 reference. You see here in blue. That brings us to chapter 5, exhaust systems. For section 501.3.1, a recommendation to retain the state amendment and include new language in item number 3 from the model code, shown here in blue. In section 504.4, a recommendation to retain amendment and modify the language to include the language that changed in the 2018 code as the last sentence in the second paragraph. Section 505.3, domestic exhaust ducts, recommendation to retain the amendment and integrate some changes from the 2018 and 2024 code that had nothing to do with the state amendments. Let's see that here in blue. Section 506.3.2.4, vibration isolation, a recommendation to retain and modify the amendment with some editorial changes from the 2024 model code. And then in section 506.3.9, 506.3.9.1 and 506.3.9.2 grease duct cleanout locations, retain the amendments and include editorial changes to item number 4. And that concludes chapter 5 and brings us to chapter 6, duct systems. In section 601.2, air movement and egress elements, a recommendation to retain the state amendment and update the IFC section reference in 6.4. Got that here, or no, sorry, here with the highlighted section. In 602.1, general, retain the amendment and renumber and reformat for the model code changes. And add a reference to the Washington State Energy Code commercial on use of cavities as plenums and to double check for a conflict. So we'll be looking for a proposal on that one, correct, Krista?
Yes.
Okay. And that brings us to chapter 10, boilers, water heaters, and pressure vessels. Yeah. All amendments in that section are recommended to be retained. Chapter 11, refrigeration. Section 1106.4.2, emergency ventilation system, with a recommendation to repeal the amendment. It's no longer needed with the rewrite of this section to correlate with ASHRAE 15. Chapter 12, hydronic piping. Maintain existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 13, fuel oil piping and storage, with recommendations to keep the amendments within that chapter. Chapter 15 referenced standards with the ANCE/CSA/UL 60335-2-40-2019 with a recommendation to delete the state amendment and accept the model code language. And this is a note here that it may have already been changed via expedited or other rulemaking before the adoption of this code. So we have some work pending on this one, Krista. Okay. With the reference standard for CSA/UL.ANCE with a recommendation to delete the state amendment and accept the model code language referencing the 2022 edition of this document. For the reference to UL/CSA/ANCE, a recommendation to delete this amendment and accept the model code language referencing the 2022 edition.
And then this is just showing the table that was too big to fit in.
In the other section. And then the remainder of this report is a table that is too big to fit into the section of the report where it would have been appropriately placed to flow. And there's some changes that were identified in the table above.
Just all the additions of new stuff.
Okay, with the additions of new stuff shown in blue on this table. And is this just stuff that goes along with the table?
No, that's the state amendment for residential ventilation. So
Okay. With no changes shown here. Okay.
For the following text. Question.
All right, and with that one, that concludes the overarching review of the existing amendment report for the 2024 IMC. I'll ask if there's any sections that anybody would like to go back and revisit before we potentially entertain a motion on this one.
Anybody have any comments? Jay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that the MVPE committee did spend some time with the TAG chair going through all the existing amendments and the recommendations. What you see here that Dustin's gone through is the committee's recommendation to accept the TAG's recommendation. We had no changes, but did spend some significant time walking through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? And the chair would entertain a motion to accept the recommendation. Michelle?
I'll make a motion. The motion is to accept the recommendations, and then is this putting it out for what is the next step in this process?
If this report is approved here today, it will be published and made available to the public as a final report document.
And will it then be available for to accept code change proposals?
Yes,
Well,
that proposal period is already open, but the hope is to have an additional 60 days after this meeting for the proponents to have this report available to use when they draft their proposals.
Okay, should that be part of the motion?
As far as this one, I don't believe so. The proposal period is already open.
Okay.
And, we're just looking for this report to be approved for dissemination to the public.
And I think that applies to all of the reports we're talking about today, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure I was getting the right motion made. Motion is to approve the document in front of us, I guess.
Second.
Thank you. Been a motion and a second to approve the TAG and committee's report. Any comments? Ben?
Yeah, I guess I did want to clarify. So we have some items marked in the report as recommending additional action or review. Would approval of the report by the council also initiate that to refer it to the tags to take action on it?
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The IMC existing amendments report is approved.
Okay, one moment, I'll pull up the significant changes report. And similarly on this one, as I run through it, the content's slightly different. We'll be looking for a recommendation to get a proposal on sections on this one. So if the recommendation on a significant change is to accept the change, as you see here in these first lines, we'll scroll through them unless we want to talk about a specific section. And then we'll stop at the ones and talk about them, the ones where the tag recommends a amendment is needed. So in chapter 1, scope and administration. Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, Dustin, I just had a quick question on the formatting for this one. It looks like at the top, the legend had the blue category is accept with amendment, and then green was accept change without amendment.
Yes.
Because those need to get switched, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think those are flip-flopped on this one.
Okay.
Okay. As I run through here, we'll make a note to make the change there in the final document. And I'll be reading the stuff in here just to make sure we don't miss any proposed changes for folks. Okay. Thank you for bringing that one to the attention, Ben. All right. It looks like the changes depicted there as significant changes in chapter 1 are all proposed to be accepted changes in the 2024 code. Chapter 2 for definitions. With all those changes shown in chapter 2, come with a recommendation to accept the changes. Chapter 3, general regulations. So in section 306.5, we have a recommendation to accept these model code changes and to repeal the existing state amendment. And this one's identified as it could have a slight initial cost increase, but ultimately will be a cost savings. And that brings us to chapter 4 for ventilation. Section 401.4, intake opening locations. Recommendation to maintain the state amendment, but integrate these changes into item 3. And 403.3, other buildings intended to be occupied, a recommendation to accept the change as shown. And Krista, does this one affect the existing amendment? Doesn't look like it does.
Yeah, the 3 stories in height and mass goes away.
Okay. Table 403.3.1.1, minimum ventilation rates. Recommendation to retain the existing amendment and then accept all other model code changes within this section or table. And then we have a note here to see the existing amendments report for the full table text. And this is that table that was at the bottom of the report. For section 403.3.2, group R ventilation rates, recommendation to not adopt this change and retain the existing state amendment. For section or table 403.3.2.3, minimum required local exhaust rates, recommendation to not adopt the change and maintain the state amendment. In 407.1, general ambulatory care facilities, a recommendation to maintain the state amendment but add a new reference. Here to number 3, the ASHRAE ASHE 170. That brings us to chapter 5 for exhaust systems. Section 501.3.1, location of exhaust outlets, a recommendation to maintain the amendment but integrate the new code language. Section 503 or 505.3, exhaust ducts for domestic cooking. Recommendation to retain the state amendment and integrate the changes shown in blue. We have this one colored a little bit different. Krista, is there any update on this one?
That was a significant change with the new language that we're recommending adoption of. It's no significant change in cost, but it is a change for enforcement personnel, and so it's a heads up for enforcement.
Okay, Ben, is that cover it, Ben?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was providing additional options for testing, but as Krista mentioned, that could also introduce additional review or other verification burden.
Okay, thank you. In section 507.1.3, fuel burning appliances, a recommendation to accept the changes and keep the 2021 language,
No,
or no?
the staff recommendation is to keep the language, the
Oh.
guide recommendation is to keep the 2021 language, so
Okay,
not accept the change.
do we
Thank
need to
you,
make a
Joe.
determination on this section here today to make an overall recommendation?
No, because the recommendation is to
Okay,
keep the 2021.
gotcha.
Ben, you got your hand up? Okay. Right.
Yeah, I was, if anyone wanted clarification, I think the tag had recommended keeping the 2020 or 2021 language as the 2024 language appeared to introduce some pretty significant restrictions on this. So I think this would be another one that might benefit from a code change proposal that may bring in some of the intent from the 2024 changes, but not restrict usage outside of a sensible use for these appliances.
Gotcha. Then that brings us to section 507.2 for type 1 hoods, with a recommendation to accept the changes and retain the amendment. And we have a commentary on the existing amendment report. Brings us to chapter 6 for duct systems. On section 601.5 for return air openings, recommendation from the tag and the committee to accept the changes. And then we have develop a code change proposal to address the application to the HRVs/ERVs in here. Section 602.1 general for plenums, a recommendation to accept the changes but modify to remove the second sentence of 602.1 and keep the state amendment within the new 602.1.2. And then we have a note here that the redundant language in 602.1 was submitted as an errata item to ICC. In section 607.2.4 for mechanical, electrical, and plumbing controls, a recommendation to accept the changes. This new section specifically prohibits installation of wiring and controls through dampers unless they're part of the air distribution system. There's a cost associated with the limitation to number 4. Or not the number 4. There's a cost association with limitation to 4 feet when change out. A possible exception for existing systems with a code change proposal might come in. Brings us to chapter 9 for specific appliances, fireplaces, and solid fuel burning equipment. A note here in section 931 for steam bath equipment. It's a new section with a UL standard and the term install per manufacturer instructions with recommendations to accept these changes. Chapter 10, boilers, water heaters, and pressure vessels. Section 1001.1 for scope, and within this chapter, retain the existing amendment in exception 7 and add a new exception number 8. Chapter 11, refrigeration. In 1101.2.1, there's a new section added for A2L refrigerant reference standards. And then in 1101.7, it has been edited to be in line with the ASHRAE 15, and there's some costs associated with this change, but the recommendation is to overall accept these changes. In 1102.2.1, mixing, the recommendation is to accept the changes, which is an editorial adding of the reference to ASHRAE 15. In 1103. Or table 1103.1, refrigerant classification amount in OEL, accept the changes and update the table. The table has been updated with new refrigerants in line with ASHRAE 34 and SSPC 34. In section 1104.3.1, air conditioning for human comfort, a recommendation to accept the changes. This new section, or the new sections, require that high probability systems must use A1 or A2L refrigerants based on requirements in ASHRAE 15. Other refrigerants can be used if under 6.6 pounds for residential or 22 pounds for commercial. Section 1104.3.2 for group A2, A3, B2, and B3 refrigerants. Recommendation to accept the changes. Change is non-industrial use is deleted, and the remainder is updated for the use of A3 and B3 refrigerants consistent within ASHRAE 15. Section 1106.4, group A2L and B2L refrigerants. Recommendation to accept the changes. These changes deleted the existing text and replaced with a scoping section for A2L and B2L machinery rooms with new subsections 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3, consistent with the requirements of ASHRAE 15. Section 1106.4.2, refrigerant detector. ASHRAE 15 requires 2 levels of ventilation based on the response of the refrigerant detector, with a recommendation to accept this change. Table 1106.4.2, group A2L and B2L detector activation, a recommendation to accept the addition of this table. The new table based on the 2 levels of ventilation required by ASHRAE 15, a small leak versus a large leak. Section 1106.4.3, mechanical ventilation, with a recommendation to accept the change. This change refers to ASHRAE 15 for the mechanical ventilation system requirements. For 1109.2.2, refrigerant pipe enclosure, a recommendation to accept the change. This change adds a section for outside the building consistent with ASHRAE 15. For 1109.2.3, prohibited location, a recommendation to accept the change, and it adds exposed, or the term exposed, to the sentence within an exterior exit stair. Section 1109.2.6, exposed piping surface temperature. with a recommendation to accept the change. Are most of these accept the change and there's just kind of describing what the change is?
Right, those are just the ones, that's
Okay.
how we marked the ones that were more significant.
Gotcha. If it's friendly to the group, if the recommendation here is just to accept the change and we have these colorations on the line are indicating a slightly more significant change, I'd like to kind of cruise through them to save a little bit of time. Ben?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, Dustin. And just to mention it for those on the call today, there's extensive changes to Chapter 11 that you're seeing that are allowing and providing requirements for A2L and B2L refrigerants. So these are fairly extensive. There's at the end of this document, there's the model code summary of the changes as well. I believe that got attached. So that's also helpful to review, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Brings us to chapter 12 for hydronic piping. With the recommendation for those changes shown to be accepted. Chapter 15, reference standards. With the recommendation to accept all those changes. There's some new appendices within the 2024 text. For new Appendix D, clean air delivery, recommendation to not adopt. The section conflicts with section 605.4. It requires a MERV 13 filler file. Is that filters supposed to be? Filters in group A, B, E, and I occupancies. Then the new Appendix E for clean air delivery and monitoring, with a recommendation to not adopt statewide. It can be adopted locally by the authority having jurisdiction, but the tag recommendation is to not adopt. This section requires CO2 sensors for every 500 square feet of occupiable space in groups A, B, E, and I occupancies. And this is the changes to table 1103.1, which I just didn't fit in line.
Yeah, and this is the ICC description of all the A2L changes within the mechanical code.
Okay.
So it repeats a lot of the stuff from the above table too.
And looking at it, the recommendations to accept these changes as shown. Or there's a couple strikeouts.
Those are just changes from the 2021 to 2024.
Okay. And these are changes in the IFC related to A2L refrigerant requirements?
Yeah.
Okay. And so we would need to just correlate these changes within the IFC stuff we got going on?
They should already be.
Okay.
I mean, these are just ICC changes. So, you know. And building code follows that.
Okay. This is our 2024 IBC changes related to A2L refrigerants. And with that, that brings us to the conclusion of the 2024 IMC Significant Changes Report. Is there any section that anybody would like to go back and review a little bit further? Seeing no hands and hearing no voices, I guess we'd be in the position to entertain a motion on this report. Oh,
I can do my answer tomorrow.
yeah. So are we we're still live, right? Okay.
You wanna turn your mic off? I can turn mine.
Yeah, give me 1 second. So we have a okay, we should be good. So we have someone in the room who'd like to give some public comment on the report here. It's Hank, right?
Patrick Hanks.
Patrick Hanks.
Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington, for the record. First of all, we're grateful for all the time and effort that staff and tags and committees put on this. It looks like it was a lot of work going through and being diligent with that, so we're grateful for that. We're neutral on whether the council accepts the reports or not, but we just wanted to flag one item for the IMC. We're opposed to adopting Appendix D for groups A and B occupancies. Full adoption of Appendix D would apply to these groups and thus affect spaces within mixed-use multifamily buildings. Thank you.
Are we still live in the room? Can people hear us online?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
Ben?
Yeah, I guess to respond to the public comment, as noted here in the report that we were looking at, this was recommended by the TAG to not be adopted as there's several state amendments in section 605.4 that already provide guidance and requirements on filter requirements for different occupancies. And those were introduced in the last code cycle. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion to adopt the report?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to adopt. Any discussion? Seeing no hands, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation moves forward. That brings us to the 2024 IFGC Existing Amendments Report.
Did not mean to close out my browser. 1 second. All right. That brings us to the 2024 International Fuel and Gas Code Existing Amendment Review. All righty. So that brings us to Chapter 1 of the IFGC Scope and Administration. In Section 101.2 Scope, a recommendation to keep the existing amendment, but update the language in Exception 1 to match the 2024 and 2021 IFGC language. It brings us to Chapter 4, Gas Piping Installations, with a recommendation to keep the existing amendments within this section. Chapter 8, Reference Standards, with the recommendation to maintain the existing amendment and update if it's available. And that is the end of the existing amendments report for the 2024 International Fuel Gas Code.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the report?
So move. This is Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Second, Joe.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. IFGC significant changes.
Yes, so here we are with the 2024 International Fuel Gas Code Significant Changes Report. We have some general term changes in the sections listed here spanning from Chapter 3 to Chapter 5 with the recommendation to adopt these changes. Chapter 1, Scope and Administration with Section 104 and 105 in the 2021 code, the Section 104 in the 2024, duties and powers of the code official with a recommendation to adopt the changes, all changes for these sections for the code. And this one is just flagged for a little bit more significant change like the previous report. Okay. Check. So all the sums we've gone through so far are accept the changes in the model code in Chapter 8 reference standards with recommendations to accept the changes within these sections. And that brings us to the end of the 2024 International Fuel Gas Code Significant Changes Report.
Okay, any comments? Questions? Is there a motion to approve the report?
So moved.
Joe?
Second, Jay.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I have a question. This is Roger.
Go ahead.
Looking at the Board of Appeals, Section 114, I understand and this can go through the tag process of course, but it says remove section and renumbered subsequent sections, content moved to an appendix. I just want to make sure the appendix is not, is the appendix part of the adopted code, and will there be a Board of Appeals available? That's my question, kind of a bigger overarching. Seems like a big change that I thought I wouldn't mind an explanation from whomever.
Appendix is not adopted as a part of the code. It is up to the local jurisdictions to adopt the appendix if they wish, or they can set up any other appeals board.
Okay, that answers my question. It just seems like I would want to make sure that we're not removing a Board of Appeals somewhere in how this is formatted. So just a flag for the tag to double check. That's it, Damon. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion to accept the report. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us through the MVPE committee reports. Thank you, everybody, for all the hard work on this. We'll move on to the BFRW committee reports. Looks like we've got an item for BFRW committee members.
Yes, so at our previous council meeting, our council voted to separate the residential tag from the WUI code tag. And in so doing, we created two new tag chairs. And on the BFRW committee, those tag chairs are automatically included, but then we have some other council members that are members of that committee. So currently, it was overlooked at that meeting that we have too many members on that committee. And if we had everybody at that committee, we would establish a quorum of the council. And so as far as folks that aren't chairs tags that are members of that committee, we have Tom Handy or Craig Holt. And we have a need to reduce that committee officially right now by one member.
Craig is not with us today. Tom, you want to volunteer to resign?
Yeah, I could, I suppose, if we need to get rid of somebody.
Or we could just.
Unless Craig wants to by default by not showing up.
Yeah, that's, I was thinking the same thing.
Chair's discretion.
Yeah, I think since this includes the IBC and the IEBC, and because Craig is the commercial general contractor representative, I kind of think it's important for him to be a part of this.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Dustin, does that solve our
I
conflict?
think it does. Chris, do you think we need a vote on that?
I think Tom just resigned, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Roger?
I was gonna say that if we needed a vote, I was gonna make a motion. And I did want to point out, we did not have a quorum at the most recent BFRW committee meeting. Not everybody was there, so it's not, we did not exceed the number of council members.
Thank you. Appreciate you pointing that out.
Okay, so that solves the issue that we had there as far as membership goes. That brings us to the existing amendments reports for the IBC, IEBC, and IFC. These reports are similarly coming to you with the recommendation of the committees to approve. And so they are formatted similarly to the reports we've reviewed so far. And we'll roll through starting with the IBC existing amendments report. And we will stop at the sections that are flagged for potential changes and to not keep the existing amendments. So. I guess this one's a long one. It's taking a little bit to download. Alrighty. So moving through this one, if they're not colorized blue here in these boxes, we'll stop and take a note on them. So starting with chapter 1 of the 2024 International Building Code existing amendments report for scope and administration. Chapter 1 comes with recommendations to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 2, definitions. The definition for child or family home child care comes with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to update to 16 children to align with changes made in the residential code earlier this year. The definition for custodial care, when it comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment as the model code language is identical. The same recommendation comes for the definition for efficiency dwelling unit. The definition for high-rise building comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment and recommend that the TAG recommends that a proposal comes in for further review. On this one, the main change here is the occupied roof is now changed to occupiable roof. And then we add the last sentence there. The definition for limited verbal or physical assistance comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is identical. Brings us to chapter 3, occupancy classification. Section 305.2.4 for family home childcare comes with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to update 12 to 16 and coordinate with the International Residential Code changes that we made as a state amendment, sorry. Section 308.5.5 for family home childcare comes with a recommendation to modify to update 12 to 16 and coordinate with the International Residential Code state amendments. Section 310.3 for residential group R2 comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. The model code language isn't the exact same as our state amendment language, but when compared, has no regulatory difference compared to our state amendment. Brings us to chapter 4 for special detailed requirements based on occupancy and use. Section 412.7.3 means of egress. Those are the recommendation to modify the existing amendment, incorporating the metric measurement in a couple sections that are left out in our state amendment. No regulatory change. Section 420.2 separation walls comes with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment. And it comes to incorporate with the new model code language into the existing amendment. So it's shown here in blue. And I'll just point out the main difference between these reports as far as what you're seeing. You saw a lot of red in the last report and a lot of green in this report. Red in the last report was the state amendment language, and green in this report is the state amendment language. For section 422.3.1 means of egress, we just have it flagged to review with the International Fire Code for coordination. Brings us to chapter 5, general building heights and areas. Section 503.1.4.1 enclosures over occupiable roof areas comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendments. You see here the model code language as compared to the amendment language, and then just a suggestion is the word over accurate here for this section. Section 503.1.4.2 for guards comes with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to use the new term occupiable roof as opposed to occupied roofs. It's a change that we see globally over the code language. Or over the model code language, sorry. In section 504.4.1, stair enclosure pressurization increase, was the recommendation to maintain the existing amendment, but to double check and coordinate with the L&I electrical division to see if the 2020 NEC is the same as the 2023 reference. And potentially remove the year reference from the code language that we have adopted. Section 508.5.1, mixed use and occupancy, comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is identical to the amendment. Section 510.2, special provisions, recommend to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is identical. Brings us to chapter 6, types of construction. Section 602.4.2.2.2, protected area, comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language amendment, if we delete the amendment, it'll save cost and reduce cost for the interior finishes. Section 602.4.2.2.4, separation distance between unprotected mass timber elements. Recommend repeal the existing state amendment. This amendment reduces, or if we repeal the amendment, it'll reduce costs. Section 602.4.2.3, floors, repeal the existing amendment. It'll save cost on construction. Section 602.4.4.3, with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment as it will save costs. Brings us to chapter 7, fire and smoke protection features. Section 704.6.1 is moved to 704.5.1 and is titled secondary attachments to structural members, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The new model code language is the same as the 2021 amendment language, and they also recommend removing the term non-structural from the title of the section. Brings us to chapter 8, interior finishes. There's no existing amendments within this chapter. Chapter 9, fire protection and life safety systems. We have section 903.2.11.1.3 for basements, with a recommendation to maintain the existing amendment, but also check in with the fire review on this one to see if they're maintaining that section. Section 907.9 is a existing state amendment that is not for a section named in the model code section. It's 909 or 907.9 reserved. This language is really only appropriate when reserving the WAC sections, and it's not necessary to maintain this language in the body of the code. And so the recommendation is to repeal. There's a couple more of these in the code as well as we get to them. Section 909.21.12, hoistway venting, with a recommendation to repeal the amendment, and the hoistway venting was already removed in the 2018 and 2021 amendments. Used to be in section 3009 in the 2015 amendment. In section 913.2.1 for protection of fire pump rooms, with a recommendation to maintain the amendment and modify it by adding the new model code language in there. The exception, so modified, adding new language for the exception to the protected pathway from NFPA 20 section 4.14.2.2 .1.1.2 and keeping exception 1 and 2 from the model code, which were previously removed by amendment. Section 915.1.1, where required, modify the existing state amendment. The previous exception 1 aligns with the 2024 IBC updated language and adds requirements for all group R2 occupancies with the exception of R2 college dormitories. And number 2, previous exception 2 language is addressed by the 2024 model code language. And this one's flagged for correlation review with the fire code tag. Section 915.2.1 dwelling units, with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to align with the 2024 IFC language. Limits amendment to adding requirements for CO2 detection on each level of a dwelling where CO detection is required outside of a sleeping area. Brings us to chapter 10 for means of egress. In section 1006.3.4 for single exits, we have a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. This one's also flagged for some legislative rulemaking that was handed down to the SBCC. So proposals are needed for this section. In section 1009.8 for two-way communication, a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment because the model code language is the same. And same for the 1009.8.1, the model code language is the same as the state amendment. And section 1014.2.2 was moved to 1014.3, titled lateral location. A recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The new model code language is the same. In 1015.2, where required, repeal the existing state amendments. The new model code language includes the state amendment. Chapter 11, accessibility. In section 1101.2.1 is another one of these sections that's just got the text reserved in there. We're recommending to remove that language. Section 1101.2.2, maintain the amendment but renumber. This is to have our amendment sections flow with the ICC A117 document. As they are in our amendments right now, you'll see these next couple sections have them renumbered so that they are in order with the ICC A117 document or sections as well. 1101.2.3 is another reserve section that is no longer needed. These next sections, 1101.2.4 through 1101.2.9 are all amendments that just need to be renumbered so that they flow within the ICC A117 document. In section 1107.2 for motor vehicle related facilities, it comes with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. In exception number 1, R4 has been added by the model code. We want to keep the new model code language and incorporate it into the Washington Amendment. See significant changes tab in exception number 2. Added exceptions are added, and the tag needs to review this new language. Trucks have been added to this language as well. In section 1110.2 for toilet and bathing facilities, a recommendation to repeal the state amendment. The model code language is the same. Brings us to chapter 12 for interior environment. Section 1208 for interior space dimensions, come with a recommendation to repeal. The new model code language is the same as the Washington Amendment. And there says there is a suggestion to adopt the ICC 2024 code text. And okay, that was the same as what I already said. Sorry. Chapter 13, energy efficiency, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 14, performance requirements. We have a recommendation to potentially remove the existing amendment. It's already in the 2024 code. There's some minor changes. This section needs additional review to review the reason statement for the creation of the state amendment. The research on this one, this amendment was created in 2009. It made it so that an airspace was not required behind fiber cement siding. It was filed with the WSR 07-16-025. This amendment was maintained through the 2012, 2015, and 2018 codes with no changes. In 2021, the code moved from section 1403.2 to 1402.2 with no changes. So this one just the group wants to work or look at this one a little bit more potential changes on that one. Chapter 15, roof assemblies and rooftop structures, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 16, structural design. We have some renumbering recommended within this section to align with the ASCE 722. Brings us to chapter 17, special inspections and tests. Section 1705.13.6 for plumbing, mechanical, and electrical components, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. Chapter 18, soils and foundations, with a recommendation to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 19, soils and foundations, has no existing amendments. Chapter 20, aluminum, has no existing amendments. Chapter 21, masonry. With recommendations to maintain those amendments. Chapter 22, steel, has no existing amendments. Chapter 23 for wood. With the recommendation to maintain those existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 24, glass and glazing. Section 2405.3, screening, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. This section is reformatted, but contains all the elements of the 2021 Washington State amendments, and so is regulatorily the same. Chapter 25, gypsum panel products and plaster, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 26, plastic, also contains no existing amendments. Chapter 27, electrical, comes with a recommendation to maintain the amendment within that chapter. Chapter 28, mechanical systems, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 29, plumbing systems. Table 2902.1 comes with a recommendation to keep the existing amendment and modify it to incorporate model code changes. This one's a little bit of a tricky table because we have the changes in the IBC plus we combine this table and merge it with the UPC table, and that gives us our state amended table for this section. Excuse me. Brings us to chapter 30 for elevators and conveying systems. Section 3006.3 hoistway opening protection with the recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. Want to confirm with the fire tag. This new model code change adds a new number 5. And the recommendation is to adopt the model code language. Chapter 31, special construction. Section 3103.1, general, with a model recommendation to modify the existing amendment and incorporate the new model code changes and review for conflict with new exception number 1 and the existing state amendment. Section 3116.1, construction, with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment. Needs to renumber the section and correlate with the IFC review of NFPA 130. And a consideration to break out into its own chapter, like chapter 49 in the fire code. Section 3116.2, modifications to NFPA 130. Keep the existing amendment as is and modify it. This one needs to renumber the section and correlate with the IFC review of NFPA 130, and similarly potentially break it out into its own chapter with the previous ones. Chapter 32, encroachments into the public right-of-way, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 33, safeguards during construction, with a recommendation to maintain the existing amendment within that chapter. Chapter 34 is a reserved chapter in the model code. Chapter 35, reference standards, with the recommendation to modify the existing amendment to this chapter and remove the ASC E7 amendments and NFPA 13 lines. The model code has added these references and updated all the references to the most current documents. The groups did a review on Appendix E, even though this contains no existing amendments. This appendix is adopted in WAC 5150-003. With this comes with the recommendation to maintain the existing amendment to adopt this appendix. It still contains information not contained elsewhere in our other documents. For Appendix P, construction and demolition material management / sleeping lofts, the new model code has added an Appendix P, which is now sleeping lofts. And that would push our existing amendment, which added Appendix P in the 2021 code, to be Appendix Q. So the recommendation is to maintain the amendment, but renumber it to Appendix Q. And we have that language there. And for some reason, a few blank pages. I think these are just, the table must have gone over to the other spread over. So that brings us to the end of the 2024 International Building Code Existing Amendments report. Is there any section that we would like to go back and revisit?
Any of the attendees or panelists have any comments or questions? If so, raise your hand.
We have a Patrick, correct?
Yes.
Patrick Hanks in the room who would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Patrick.
So once again, for the record, Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. And once again, thank you to the staff and TAG and committee members for working on this. BIW is neutral on accepting the report, but we just want to flag a couple of things. First off, we are opposed to keeping the existing amendment for the NFPA 13R sprinkler systems in section 903.3.1.2. The 2024 code restored the ability to use the NFPA 13R systems in many four-story multifamily buildings instead of full NFPA 13 systems. This partially reverses the effective change required by the 2021 code. And then we are in support of keeping the existing amendment for exterior window and door assemblies in section 1709.5. And we just want to say thank you to TAGS committee and council for being mindful of small businesses. So thank you.
Okay. Are we scrolling up to 903.3.1.2?
Okay, now 3.3.1.2, you right, here we are.
Okay.
We have a guest, Micah, with his hand up.
Micah, go ahead. Micah, you can go ahead. Looks like you're unmuted, but we're not hearing you.
How about now?
There you go.
Question for the BIW representative on this. If you're asking for us to remove this amendment, would that mean going to the limit of 30 feet for those 13R sprinkler systems? And wouldn't that prohibit or at least limit your four-story concern that you just mentioned? Again, the amendment exceeds or goes up to the 60 feet where the model code is limiting it to 30 feet. So our amendment is actually going back to the old language, allowing that 60 feet, so you could get that four-story. So if there's any clarification there, that'd be helpful. Thanks.
Patrick, do you have any comment on that?
So the recommendation that I'm seeing on screen is to keep the existing 2021 code amendment instead of accepting the 2024 language.
Correct.
Correct.
It looks like the 2020-21 is a little bit more acceptable. 4 stories not exceeding 60 feet as opposed to 45 feet. Can we go ahead?
I was comparing, my apologies, I was comparing the 2024 code to the original 2021 code. I don't think I looked at if the 2021 Washington State made changes to the 2021 model, so I might be getting a mix up there. If the model language is, sounds like it's more preferable, then that would be fine.
Okay. Should we flag this amendment as something for the TAG to consider?
We definitely can.
Okay. Roger?
Damon, thanks. What I was going to say was I appreciate the comments from the BIW representative. What we're asking to do is to just publish this as a report.
Correct.
Any parts of this report that they take exception to, they can file a change proposal. So I think that's the, if you support or don't support a section, then if you don't support a section, then you can submit a change proposal, and the tags, the process is the tags will then consider that proposal. So
that is correct. Although today is an opportunity to at least flag items. So that's what we're doing in this instance. I see a hand up from David McGee. David, you're muted.
Hello, this is David McGee with the Earthquake Valve Company. How are you doing today?
Good.
I was wondering if the council would consider the implementation of seismic shutoff valves onto elderly care facilities and child care facilities. This is my first time in one of these meetings, so forgive me if I'm not addressing this issue at the correct time. But yeah, I was wondering if the council would consider that.
If you could hold for just a second, I think we're concluded with 903-312. Can we scroll down to 1709.5, and then David, we'll get back to you on your issue.
All right, thank you.
1709.5. That's a good shortcut.
Yes.
So, okay, so you're just
We're in
speaking.
support of the recommendation there. We're just flagging our thanks for looking out for small businesses on that.
Fantastic. Cool. Okay. Going back to David, do you know the code section you're referring to?
No, I do not.
Is it something that is in the model codes? Are you aware?
I don't believe it's in any building codes yet. It is in Southern California, but not in Washington State.
Okay. Then I think in this case, we are in the public comment period is open. So if you go to our website, there is a form for submitting a code amendment. It does need to be filled out completely, but that is the correct vehicle for making a recommendation for the tag and the committee and council to consider. Does that
Okay,
help?
thank you. Yes,
Good.
thank you for that information. I
Good.
appreciate it.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, can I get a motion to approve the report as recommended by the committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Roger.
This is Todd, I'll second.
Thanks, Todd. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Dustin.
You guys are very welcome. That takes us, excuse me, to the 2024 International Building Code Significant Changes Report. All right. So in chapter 1 of the 2024 International Building Code Significant Changes Report, no significant changes were identified. In chapter 2 definitions, there's a significant change identified, but the recommendation to adopt that change. Chapter 3 occupancy classification, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 4 special detailed requirements based on occupancy and use. With no recommendations for amendments to these changed sections. Chapter 5, general building heights and areas. Table 509.1 incidental uses is flagged for additional review, but it's not a significant change. In this table, the sections for I2 laundry, the text here in blue that adds the language that provide automatic sprinkler system is additional for those sections as compared to the 2021 language. Chapter 6, types of construction, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 7, fire and smoke protection features. Significant changes were identified, but no recommendations for amendments to these sections was called out. Section or chapter 8, interior finishes. No calls for additional amendments within this chapter. Chapter 9, Fire Protection and Life Safety Systems. Section 915.1.1, where required, is called out for additional amendments in this section. New language in 2024 affects the existing estate amendment with a recommendation to adopt the model code changes and add R2 at item 5 to match the existing state amendment. Chapter 10, means of egress, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 11, accessibility, section 1107.2, exception number 1 for electric vehicle charging station. Jay, you have your hand up?
I may have a question. I'd like to have you finish your description of this change.
So they have identified 1107.2 exception number 1 to modify an existing amendment. In the exception number 1, electrical vehicle charging stations provided to serve group R3 and R4 occupancies are not required to comply with this section. Consider redacting R4. That one is not required. So earlier this year, we adopted R4 occupancies in the state of Washington. And then exception number 2 allows excluding electric vehicle charging stations used exclusively by buses, trucks, other delivery vehicles, law enforcement vehicles, and motor pools are not required to comply with this section. The reviewer has notes in here to consider, including in the Washington law enforcement, and consider redacting all other vehicle mentions in exception number 2.
Okay, my question on this is, for all the considers here, are these code amendments that are potentially or code proposals that are potentially coming? And secondly, is this section about electrical vehicle charging stations in general, or the requirement for accessible electrical vehicle charging stations? Thank you.
This is within the accessible electrical vehicle charging station section.
Okay. And is this the tag's going to be presenting some code proposals, or there are others that may be
So this one's flagged as a yes, the tag will potentially produce a proposal for this one, but we could also expect some proposals to come in from the industry as well.
Great, thank you.
Micah. First, oh, give me 1 second. There you go.
Thanks. Can you hear me? It's asking me to join as a panelist.
I actually clicked the wrong button.
That's okay. I mean, I can. It's not a problem. The only question here would be, I think that the recommendation may need to be to remove exception 1 because our state law requires that both R3 and R4 provide EV infrastructure. Just a curiosity question there. Thanks.
Pete, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm a little unclear about what this is trying to achieve here. I mean, I have no objection to those motor pools and other uses for charging stations for electric vehicles that are not in the general public, but for R3 and R4 residences. Does that mean that those do not have to have accessible, or some portion of them must be accessible?
So with the R3 and R4 occupancies, they're, with the model code language, not required to comply with the section for accessible vehicle charging stations. I think Micah has a pertinent recommendation to review this with what the Washington law says. on this one, so as the tag develops any proposals for this section, we need to review it with the state law and make sure we're not missing anything with that on there. I don't know if I quite touched all the components of your question, Pete.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how to phrase the question, and maybe Micah does better. But I, am concerned about whether or not residential units will have accessible EV charging units. That's and if that's something that we need to review with the state law and change, but this implies that no, you don't have to build accessible units, I guess, is how I'm reading this. So exception.
I would say that the other R occupancies would be required. But as is part of the proposal that we come up with, we may consider removing number one as Micah suggested. Micah?
Yeah, kind of, I think where Pete's getting at is are the R3 and R4 occupancies going to be providing accessible parking stalls that therefore would be required to be EV ready or provide EV infrastructure? The answer would be it could, depending on what type of R3 or R4 you put in, because R3 covers congregate living facilities and lodging houses, and then the R4s, of course, can cover group homes and other types of facilities that may provide parking that thus would have to be accessible and provide EV infrastructure. So it could, Pete. So we don't want to exempt them here based on the state law, where the state law doesn't exempt these occupancy classifications from the EV infrastructure requirements. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that clarification.
So I
My
haven't.
apologies. I came in a little late on that. I was answering a call from a framer in the field. It looks to me like this is something that's going to be up for consideration with the tag to refine and adjust this. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have a note to add to this report in the other comment section here to review with the state law with any proposals.
Perfect. Okay.
Moving on, that brings us to chapter 12, interior environment. Section 1202.4.3.2, conditioned spaces. We've identified for a potential amendment, change the reference from the International Energy Conservation Code to the Washington State Energy Code, would be the recommendation. In chapter 13, energy efficiency, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 14, performance requirements, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 15, roof assemblies and rooftop structures, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 16, structural design. In section 1608 for snow loads, there's a clarification being made that snow loads are both strength-based or allowable stress. A proposal is needed. The snow load tables in the ASCE have changes as well. And the question for consideration is, are the Washington maps more appropriate, and are they more sensitive to elevation changes in small localities? Or within at a higher resolution than the other maps that we have available in the model code. Chapter 17, special inspections and tests. With no recommendation for additional amendments within that chapter. Chapter 18, soils and foundations. With no recommendation for additional amendments within that chapter. Chapter 19, soils and foundations, no recommendation for additional amendments within the chapter. Chapter 20, aluminum, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 21, masonry, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 22, steel. With no recommendation for additional amendments within that chapter. Chapter 23, wood, no recommendation for additional amendments within that chapter. Chapter 24, glass and glazing. No recommendation for additional amendments within that chapter. Chapter 25, gypsum panel products and plaster, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 26, plastic, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 27, electrical, for section 2703, lightning protection systems. We have that one called out for an additional amendment for that chapter and to coordinate with the L&I electrical division on that one. The recommendation, possible significant change accepted. It seems logical to limit where lightning protection systems can be installed and how to interconnect those systems. This may increase costs. However, that would be negligible and never requires the system to be installed, and it just outlines when you shouldn't. And if you choose to install one, what all should be connected to it. NFPA was the proponent of this change within the model code and provided lots of justification. Note, the original proposal was to require on all buildings, and what was approved was the term when installed. Chapter 28, mechanical systems, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 29, plumbing systems, table 2902.1, we're calling it out for additional amendment. Within the model code table, there's many revisions added, providing numerous additional subdivisions for occupancies, which require a detailed review for cost implications. These additional categorizations seem to offer advantages and clarity at common mixed occupancy conditions. A merger with the Washington version of the table will be required with the Washington edition of the occupancy column, which is where we kind of combine the UPC table within this table. Chapter 30, elevators and conveying systems, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 31, special construction. No additional amendments were identified for that chapter. Chapter 32, encroachments into the public right-of-way, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 33, safeguards during construction, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 34 is a reserved chapter in the model code. Chapter 35, reference standards. All of these, I do believe, are just updated to the most current document in here. So most of these, I don't believe, have recommendations for additional amendments. Appendix E, supplementary accessibility requirements. No significant changes were identified within that appendix. Appendix P, sleeping loft, is a new appendix. We covered that pushes our existing amendment within Appendix P to Appendix Q. And Appendix Q is just being moved from Appendix P. And that brings us to the end of the International Building Code 2024 Significant Changes Report. If we like, we can go back and review any specific sections.
Okay, thank you, Dustin. Roger, go ahead.
Dustin, you went through projections into the right of way here just recently.
Mhm.
You might want to flag that. I know there was a opinion that the SBCC gave last year. So it may be good for the tag to look at that opinion and see if we shouldn't clarify that section.
Okay. I know that the opinion we gave last year was over model code sections, but you're saying flag it for potential amendment.
Yeah,
The opinion that we issued.
Yeah, I think that the tag should take a closer look at it and make sure, between the model language and the opinion that we gave, that there shouldn't be, there may potentially be an amendment. I don't know that there will need to be, but that's my only comment. If we can flag that one for review.
Okay. The trick to jump to it's not working. Well, it's probably because we developed this table a little bit different. So I'm gonna make a note to update the chapter there. All right, so in the section for projections into the public right of way, I'll have a note to review against the 2023 opinion for potential amendments in the 2024.
Thank you.
All righty, any other sections we'd like to jump back to? Then if there's no sections we'd like to look at further, we're in the position to entertain a motion on this document.
Okay, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the report.
This is Todd, so moved.
Thank you, Todd.
This is
Second,
Cheryl.
Angela.
Thank you, Angela. Any further discussion on this report? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. On to the IEBC existing amendments report.
All right. The 2024 International Existing Building Code Existing Amendments Report. Chapter 1, Scope and Administration. With recommendations to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 2, Definitions. With the recommendations to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 3, Provisions for all compliance methods. Section 306.6 additions, recommend repealing the existing state amendment. The 2024 model code language is the same as the amendment language. It looks like they break it out into two sections as well. Section 306.7.1, alterations affecting an area containing a primary function. Recommend repealing the existing amendment. The new 2024 model code language is the same. Chapter 4, repairs, section 401.2, compliance. Recommend repealing the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. Section 401.4, demolition and replacement. Recommend modifying the existing amendment. We have a lengthy comment here, so you take a breath. This WAC amendment requires compliance with building code provisions for new construction for buildings that are effectively demolished, and that's a quoted term, and repaired. Even buildings with substantial structural damage as defined in Chapter 2 are allowed to be repaired for Section 405 structural. Therefore, this change could have cost increase for construction. Note, the term effectively demolished is not defined in the IEBC. So how does one determine if the building was effectively demolished or not? Also, or the terms or where the intended method of repair is demolition and replacement is also unclear. Many repairs include demolition and replacement. So does any repair where an element is demolished and replacement needed to comply with the provisions for new construction? This would negate much of the IEBC section 405 structural. Recommend the modifying the amendment to be more clear. Section 405.1 general, recommend repealing the existing state amendment. The model code language is the same. Same for section 405.1.1 structural concrete repairs. Model code is the same as the amendment language. Section 503.13 voluntary lateral force resisting system alterations, with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment. This WAC amendment exempts voluntary lateral force resisting system alterations from complying from IBC section 1609, which is the wind, and section 1613, which is seismic, instead of the model code language, which exempts compliance from section 503. The listed requirements 1 through 4 are generally the same for both. It appears that the model code allows a voluntary alteration to enjoy more exemptions from requirements than does the WAC amendment. In other words, a voluntary lateral force resisting system alteration must meet a greater number of requirements under the WAC amendment compared to the model code language. It will be fine to keep the existing amendment and incorporate the model code language as shown here. Section 503.19, seismic requirements for alterations with increased occupant load of unreinforced masonry or hollow clay tile buildings. This 503.19 amendment introduces new language that may have a construction cost increase. Some model code sections must be renumbered to keep the WAC amendment numbering the same. Chapter 6, classification of work, with a recommendation to keep the existing amendments as is within that chapter. Chapter 7, alterations level 1, with a recommendation to maintain existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 8, alterations level 2. With recommendations to keep the existing amendments as is within that chapter. We have some notes here for 809.1 and 907.1 to change the reference from just being the commercial energy code, WAC 5111-C, to include both the energy codes, the commercial and residential. In chapter 9, alterations level 3, we covered that one. Just needs to reference both of the energy codes. Chapter 10, change of occupancy, section 102.3, for special use and occupancy, with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to include the new model code language shown here in blue below. Chapter 11, additions, with the recommendation to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 12, historic buildings, with recommendations to keep the existing amendments as is within the chapter. Chapter 13, performance compliance methods, contain no existing amendments. Chapter 14, relocated or moved buildings, with recommendations to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 15, construction safeguards, with recommendation to keep the existing amendment within that chapter. Chapter 16, reference standards, with the ACI section, with the recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. The model code language is now the same as our amendment for that section. And that brings us to the conclusion of the IEBC existing amendments report for 2024. Is there any specific sections we would like to go back and revisit?
Any further comments on the report?
This is the IEBC existing amendments?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a comment.
We have the BIAW representative, Patrick Hanks.
Yes, for the record, this is Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. Once again, for this report as well, thank you to the staff and the tags and the committees for working on it. We just have one thing we want to flag, which is we support adoption of the 2024 code for section 306.6, which correlates the IEBC with the FHA guidelines. Thank you.
So you would support maintaining that existing amendment?
We support adoption of the 2024 code amendment,
Okay,
which is, I believe, the recommendation there.
correct.
Thank you, Patrick. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the report.
This is Todd, so moved.
Thank you, Todd.
Second, Angela.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Report is accepted. Do we want to take a break before moving on to the other one? Is everybody good? I think the next report is fairly short. It is 10 pages.
I think maybe a break after the IABC before we get into the IFC would be good.
Okay, go ahead, Dustin.
10-4. Welcome to the 2024 International Existing Building Code Significant Changes Report. All right, for Chapter 1, Scope and Administration, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 2, Definitions, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 3, Provisions for all compliance methods. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 4, Repairs. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 5, Prescriptive Compliance Method. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 6, Classification of Work. No significant changes were identified. Chapter 7, Alterations Level 1. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 8, Alterations Level 2. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 9, Alterations Level 3. Within section 904.1.3, upholstered furniture or mattresses, some correlation between the International Fire Code was needed. And the note is that the IBC and IFC contain identical language, and the IEBC needs to be updated to avoid conflict. Chapter 10, Change of Occupancy. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 11, Additions. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 12, Historic Buildings. No significant changes were identified. Chapter 13, Performance Compliance Methods. No significant changes were identified. Chapter 14, Relocated or Moved Buildings. No significant changes were identified. Chapter 15, Construction Safeguards. No significant changes were identified. And Chapter 16, Reference Standards. While there was no significant changes identified within the I codes, a comment was to correlate the Uniform Plumbing Code standards within this section as a helpful addition to the I code amendments. So a potential amendment for that section is anticipated. And that brings us to the conclusion of the 2024 International Existing Building Code Significant Changes Report.
Thank you, Dustin. Any further comment on the report for the IEBC significant changes? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept the report.
This is Todd, so moved.
Thank you, Todd.
Second,
Thank you.
Angela.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The report is accepted. It is noon. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and finish the last two items. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Could we do a quick roll call to be sure we have a quorum?
Yes, Damon Doyle,
Here.
Shell Anderson.
Here.
Jay Arnold,
Here.
Todd Byerther,
Here.
Justin Burgo,
Here.
Tom Handy,
Here.
Angela Hawk. Here. Roger Haringa,
Here.
Matthew Hepner. Craig Holt's not here. Ty Menzer,
Here.
Ben O'Mara,
Here.
Pete Reiki,
Here.
Katie Sheehan, Dan Young. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the 2024 IFC Existing Amendments Report. Dustin, take it away.
All righty. So the 2024 International Fire Code Existing Amendments Report. And this one is the only one that we have some modifications to the preface sections of the title, just to update the publications. So this isn't really existing amendments. These are just publication notes through here. So in the very title page, we're going to update effective in Washington, November 1st, 2026. On page 4 for the preface, we have use the preface text from the 2021 custom books and update relevant sections to show the current dates. So all this will remain in green for now, and then anything in red is where we're showing some changes. The phone number here shown struck out in red is no longer a valid number here within the council staff. These rules were adopted by the State Building Code Council on a date that is yet to be determined, and they'll be effective on November 1st, 2026. We are changing permit fees, and the amounts are current in January of 2026. At least we anticipate them to remain the same. And then we have some table of contents notes, keeping chapter 49 inserted in there. And then we get to the preface language of WAC 5154A 001 for authority to maintain, 002 for purpose to maintain, 003 for the International Fire Code to update from the 2021 edition to the 2024 edition. And then 5154A-008 implementation updating to November 1st, 2026. And then that brings us to chapter 1 for scope and administration. In section 105.5.14.1, a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model code language is the same. In section 105.5.32, a recommendation to renumber the existing state amendment and adopt some editorial changes. And then also to check section 320 for exceptions for display vehicles. Brings us to chapter 2, definitions. Have the section or the definition for custodial care flagged for review with the IBC language for correlation purposes. The definition for emergency responder communications enhancement systems, the ERCES, recommended to repeal the amendment because the model code language is identical. The definition for frequency with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment, the model code language is identical. The definition for frequency license holders, repeal the existing amendment because the model code language is almost identical. Section or definition for frequency licensing authority, repeal the amendment because the model code language is identical. Definition for powered micromobility devices with a recommendation to repeal the amendment. The model code language includes a new definition worded slightly differently than the existing amendment. And is determined to be regulatorily the same. Brings us to chapter 3, general requirements. Section 301.2 permits, with a recommendation to repeal the amendment. The model code language picks up chapter 320 for lithium batteries. And then just as a note, the 2021 chapter 320 was additive manufacturing. And recommend considering amending to include the 2024 chapter 19 additive manufacturing and to check the ICC errata. Section 301.2 definitions, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. Mobile food preparation vehicles, section 319 was located to a new chapter 4106. The new model code language adds new definition for valet trash collection. No amendments are needed to this section. Section 307.4.2 recreational fires, with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to include the new model code language and the metric measurements and some other small words, editorial changes to this section. Section 314.4 vehicles, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. Aside from small editorial differences, the model code language is the same as the state amendment. Section 319.1 has moved to chapter 41 and is in section 4106.1. The recommendation is to repeal the existing amendment for this WAC 51-54A-0319 and change it to reserved. The new section is in chapter 41, and we are looking to create a new amendment in the new chapter. And we have a note to see the significant changes report for chapter 41. Section 322.1 general, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. Section 322.2 permits, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model code language is the same as the Washington Amendment. Section 322.3 fire safety plan, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. And both of these last two had some incorrect references to sections, and they're shown here with strikeout in green. Section 322.4 storage requirements, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. Section 322.4.1 limited indoor storage in containers, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2 indoor storage areas, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2.1 technical opinion and report, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2.2 construction requirements, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2.3 fire protection systems, with a recommendation to repeal because the existing amendment is the same as the model code language. Section 322.4.2.4 fire alarm systems, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2.5 explosion control, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.2.6 reduced requirements for storage of partially charged batteries, with a recommendation to repeal because the Washington Amendment is the same as the model code. Section 322.4.3 outdoor storage, with a recommendation to repeal because the model code language is the same. Section 322.4.3.1 distance from storage to exposures, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.3.2, storage area limits and separation, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model language is the same. Section 322.4.3.3, fire detection, with a recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 323.1, general, with the recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same as the amendment, and powered industrial trucks are included in section 309. And so the recommendation is to consider the inclusion of powered industrial trucks within this section as well. Section 323.1.1, prohibited locations. The recommendation is to repeal because the model code language is the same, with consideration of inclusion of powered industrial trucks. Section 323.2, battery chargers and equipment, with a recommendation to repeal because the model code language is the same, and consider the inclusion of powered industrial trucks. Section 323.3, listing, repeal the existing amendment because the model code language is the same. Section 323.4, battery charging areas, repeal the existing amendment because the model language is the same. Consider including the powered industrial trucks. Section 323.5, fire safety plan, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model language is the same. And then that brings us to chapter 4 for emergency planning and preparedness. Section 403.10.6, buildings with lithium ion or lithium metal battery storage, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model language clarifies and expands on the Washington Amendment language. Section 403.11.3, crowd managers for gatherings exceeding 1,000 people. We have in here maintain the amendment, but also with a note to consider a repeal recommended by the tag. And the consideration is to return to the model code language, which would be 500 instead of 1,000 people, where the crowd manager would be required. Section 406.1, general, maintain the existing amendment and add the term and uses after the word occupancies in the first sentence. That brings us to chapter 5, fire service features. Section 510.1, emergency responder communications enhancement systems in new buildings, with the recommendation to repeal the existing amendment, and comments to review the addition of exception number 4. So that's new in the model code language. Section 510.2, emergency responder communications enhancement systems in existing buildings, with the recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. Section 510.3, permits, repeal the existing amendment. 510.4, technical requirements, repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. And same for Jay. Jay, you're muted.
Thank you. Want to clarify in 510.3 that repealing the existing amendment, the amendment doesn't require a permit, and by repealing it, we would be requiring a permit for maintenance with the code, if that was what got adopted. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Jay, I think your hand popped up by accident maybe again. Okay. We were at 510.4.1, emergency responder communications enhancement system signal strength, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is the same. 510.4.2, system design, with a recommendation to repeal the amendment. the model language is the same. 510.4.2.1 with a recommendation or amplification systems and components with a recommendation to repeal the amendment. It's the same as the model code. Section 510.4.2.2 technical criteria with a recommendation to repeal the amendment with the model code language is the same. Section 510.4.2.3 standby power with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. So the model code language is the same. We have some stuff here with the comments, review potential proposals. The group decided that, or is cognizant that they maybe expect some proposals to come in on these sections, but instead of the tag preparing proposals, they wanted to let the industry drive the potential changes that might come in on these sections. Section 510.4.2.6 additional frequencies and change of frequencies with a recommendation to repeal. The model code language is the same. 510.4.2.7 design documents with the recommendation to repeal because the model language is the same. Section 510.4.2.8 with which is radio communication antenna density with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. Model language is the same. Section 510.5.5 FCC compliance with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. 510.6 maintenance with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. 510.6.2 additional frequencies with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. Section 510.6.3 non-public safety system with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. And that brings us to Chapter 6, Building Services and Systems. With no recommendations to modify amendments within that section. Chapter 7, Fire and Smoke Protection Features. We had an amendment at one point and is now a reserved WAC section. Chapter 8, Interior Finish, Decorative Materials and Furnishings. With recommendation to maintain the existing amendments within that chapter. Chapter 9, Fire Protection and Life Safety Systems. In table 903.2.11.6, automatic sprinkler systems / other required fire protection systems with recommendations to repeal the existing amendments. The new model code language within these tables is the same as our state amendment language. Section 907.2.3 fire alarm and detection systems / group E. Recommendation to modify the existing amendment. Update the amendment language to minimize unnecessary language changes, i.e. Terms like shall not be ICC language versus terms like are not previous state amendment language. So some modifications there. In section 907.2.6.1, fire alarm and detection systems in group I1 with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment is the same as the new model code language. Section 907.8.4.1, fire alarm and detection systems / testing and maintenance. Modify the existing state amendment to remove the effective date of July 1st, 2018. Same thing for these sections, 907.11 through 907.11.2, fire alarm and detection systems / NICET. Remove the effective date of July 1st, 2018. Section 915.1.1, carbon monoxide detection, recommendation to modify the existing amendment. Number one, previous exception one aligns with the 2024 IFC updated language. Add requirement for all group R2 occupancies with the exception of R2 college dormitories. Number two, previous exception number two language is addressed by the 2024 IFC changes. Says that there's also further review and correlation needed with the International Building Code tag. Similar for 915.2.1 carbon monoxide detection / dwelling units. Modify the existing state amendment to align with the updated 2024 IFC language. Limits the amendment to adding requirement for CO detection on each level of a dwelling where carbon monoxide detection is required outside of sleeping areas. Needs further review and correlation with the International Building Code tag. Section 915.5.1 general with a recommendation to delete the amendment. The model code language or the model code has language and addresses the existing amendment. Same for 915.5.2 locations. And the same for 915.6 maintenance. Chapter 10 means of egress. Section 1004.5 areas without fixed seating with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. The model code language is the same. Section 1004.5.1 increased occupant load with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment because the model language is the same. Section 1006.3.4 single exits with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. With this note here that there's work been directed by the legislature and to coordinate with the building tag. Section 1009.8 two-way communications. Repeal the existing state amendment. Coordinate with the building tag. This amendment seems to not be needed. Section 1010.2.14. Controlled egress doors in groups I1 and I2 with a recommendation to modify the existing amendment to correlate between the International Building Code. Section 1010.3.4 security grills with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model code language is inclusive of the amendment. Section 1011.17 stairways and individual dwelling units with a recommendation to modify. Relocate to 1011.1 exception number 2 to correlate with the Washington Building Code. Section 1014.2.2 lateral location with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendments. The new model code language is the same. Section 1015.2 where required with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The new model code language is the same. Chapter 11, construction requirements for existing buildings. Section 1103.2, fire safety requirements for existing buildings with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. The language in the model code is identical. Chapter 12, energy systems. Section 1201.1, scope with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. Chapter 1201.3, mixed system installation with a recommendation to repeal the existing state amendment. The amendment is picked up by the model code language. Section 1206.1 general with a recommendation to repeal. The model code language is the same. Same for 1206.5 residential use. It's the same for 1206.6.3 gas detection systems, and is also the same for 1206.6.3.1 system activation. In section 1207, there's a larger section, it's not shown here. It's been reorganized in the 2024 model code, and the recommendation is to reevaluate the whole section because of those reorganization of that section, and a proposal is needed to reorganize the amendments in this section. Chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 are reserved chapters in the model code. Chapter 20, aviation facilities, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 21, dry cleaning, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 22, combustible dust producing operations, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 23, motor fuel dispensing facilities and repair garages, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 24, flammable finishes, section 2404.2.1, prohibited enclosures for spray application operations, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The new model code language reflects the amendment with a couple differences, making 2404.3.5 as 2404.3 in the 2024 IFC. Chapter 25, fruit and crop ripening, is a reserved chapter within the IFC. Chapter 26, fumigation and insecticidal fogging, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 27, semiconductor fabrication facilities, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 28, lumber yards and agro-industrial solid biomass and woodworking facilities, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 29, manufacture of organic coatings, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 30, industrial ovens, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 31, tents, temporary special event structures, and other membrane structures. Section 3106 is a new section and is flagged for further review for potential amendments. This section is for inflatable amusement devices. Section 32, high piled combustible storage, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 33, safety during construction and demolition. This one's has a lot of sections deleted because the new model code picks up the language. So instead of saying which ones are deleted, I'm going to stop and pause at the ones that are being maintained. In section 3303.6, number 6, recommend maintaining the state amendment in this section. The references here are incorrect. In section 3303.9, number 9, with a recommendation to maintain the state amendment, the model code section reference is also incorrect. Section 3303.5, fire watch, with a recommendation to keep the state amendment. The amendment reduces costs to residential code projects. Section 3303.5.2.2, training, with a recommendation to keep the state amendment. Additional reference sections to portable fire extinguishers are still necessary. And then chapter 34, tire rebuilding and tire storage. There's no existing amendments within this chapter. Chapter 35, welding and other hot work, no existing amendments. Chapter 36, marinas, section 3601.3, permits, with a recommendation to repeal the state amendment. The requirement for the permit is now contained within section 105. Chapter 37, combustible fibers, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 38, higher education laboratories, contains no existing amendments. Chapter 39, processing and extraction facilities, contains no amendments. Chapter 40, storage of distilled spirits and wines, contains no amendments. Chapter 41, temporary heating and cooking operations, contains no amendments. Chapters 42 through 48 are reserved in the model code. Chapter 49 is a section that is also reserved in the model code, but the whole chapter is a state amendment. which modifies NFPA 130. There's a recommendation to modify these amendments to align the NFPA 130 2023 edition. The amendments are currently to the 2020 edition. So we want to also correlate with the International Building Code Chapter 3116. Chapter 50 Hazardous Materials General Provisions is reserved in the Model Code. Chapter 51 Aerosols contains no existing amendments. Chapter 53 is a reserved chapter in the Model Code. Sorry, 52 is reserved. Chapter 53 Compressed Gases, with a recommendation to maintain the amendment within that chapter. Chapter 54 Corrosive Materials contains no existing amendments. Chapter 55 Cryogenic Fluids contains no existing amendments. Chapter 56 Explosives and Fireworks, with recommendation to keep the amendments within that chapter. Chapter 57 Flammable and Combustible Liquids. This one's flagged for modification. 5704.2.11 underground tanks, modify the existing. The state amendment numbering is incorrect and it should be 5704.2.11.1 through 5704.2.11.4.2.1. Section 5706.5.4.5 commercial, industrial, governmental, or manufacturing. I think that title is a little bit weird in there. But with the recommendation to keep the existing amendment as modified, the 2024 code adds class 1 to existing state amendments and adds number 12 to the list. Modify the text to remove the last sentence. Section 5707.1 general, with the recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. It's the same as the model code. Section 5707.1.1 approval required, with the recommendation to modify the existing amendment. It looks like that's actually a recommendation to use the model code. Section 5707.2 mobile fueling vehicle, repeal the existing state amendment. It's the same as the model code. 5707.2.1 mobile fueling vehicle classifications, recommend repealing the existing state amendment and changing to the model code terminology, tiers instead of types. Section 5707.2.2 mobile fueling vehicle requirements, recommend repealing the existing amendment. The language in the IFC is the same. Section 5707.3 required documents, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The IFC language is the same. Section 5707.3.1 safety and emergency response plan, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model language is the same. 5707.3.2 training records, with a recommendation to repeal the existing amendment. The model language is the same. Section 5707.3.3 site plan, with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. Section 5707.4 mobile fueling areas, with the recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. Sections 5707.4.1 through 5707.6.4, with the recommendations to repeal these amendments. The model language is the same. Section 5707.6.6 spill reporting, with a recommendation to repeal. The model language is the same. Chapter 58 flammable and combustible liquids contains no existing amendments. Chapter 59 flammable solids contains no amendments. Chapter 60, highly toxic and toxic materials, contains no amendments. Chapter 61, liquefied petroleum gases, contains no amendments. Chapter 62, organic peroxides, contains no amendments. Chapter 63, oxidizers, oxidizing gases, and oxidizing cryogenic fluids, contains no amendments. Chapter 64, pyrophoric materials, contains no amendments. Chapter 65, trioxylin cellulose nitrate plastics, contains no amendments. Chapter 66, unstable or reactive materials, contains no amendments. Chapter 67, water reactive solids and liquids, contains no amendments. Chapters 68 through 79 are reserved in the model code. Chapter 80, referenced standards. NFPA 33, update to the 2024 edition. NFPA 96, update to the 2024 edition. NFPA 130, update to the 2023 edition. NFPA 855, update to the 2023 edition. And that concludes the 2024 International Fire Code existing amendments report.
Thank you, Dustin. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Second, this is Roger.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The report has been accepted. We'll move on to our final report.
All right, this is the 2024 International Fire Code Significant Changes Report. In the general section, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 1, Scope and Administration. For section 104.2.3, Alternative Materials, Design and Methods of Construction and Equipment. This section has moved from the 2021 IFC 104.10, with a new added exception. The recommendation is to strike the new exception with an amendment. Section 104.2.4.2, Natural Disasters. This new section needs review. It allows the fire code official to make special policies regarding code, with an example as special provisions during COVID, with the comment for additional review for potential proposals, and then as consideration as well, are there existing Washington laws to reference or be cognizant of with an amendment here. Section 105.5.56, temporary heating or cooking in wildfire risk areas. This is a new section. As far as the tag opinion on that, an amendment is needed. And to replace the term local regulations with the term fire code official. Brings us to chapter 2, definitions, where no significant changes were identified. Chapter 3, general requirements. No additional amendments were identified as being needed within that chapter. Chapter 4, emergency planning and preparedness. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 5, fire service features. This is 503.1 through 503.4.1. Recommended review and keep this section as not adopted. Section 510.1, emergency responder communication enhancement systems. Recommend to match the title from the model code into the WAC. Chapter 6, building services and systems. No significant changes were identified. Chapter 7, fire and smoke protection features. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 8, interior finish, decorative materials and furnishings. No additional amendments were identified as being needed. Chapter 9, fire protection and life safety systems. Table 903.2.11.6, additional required fire protection systems. This change addresses previous the state amendment. The recommendation is to delete the existing amendment since it's now included in the model code. Section 915.1.1, where required. The new language in the 2024 IFC affects the existing state amendment, recommending adopting the model code changes and adding R2 at item 5 to match the existing state amendment. And then we have a comment that section 15 or 915 needs additional review. Lots of new language concerning CO detection within this section. So the whole section is kind of flagged for review. Section 10, means of egress, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 11, construction requirements for existing buildings. Section 1103.2, fire safety requirements for existing buildings with an amendment needed, but we don't have any recommendations on that. I think we'd look at the existing amendments report for that one. Brings us to chapter 12, energy systems. This is the one that's been rearranged a little bit and needs to be reevaluated as a whole section. Chapter 13 through 19 are reserved in the model code. Chapter 20, aviation facilities, no significant changes were identified. Chapter 21, dry cleaning, no significant changes identified. Chapter 22, combustible dust producing operations, no significant changes identified. Chapter 23, motor fuel dispensing facilities and repair garages, no significant changes identified. Chapter 24, flammable finishes, no significant changes identified. Chapter 25, fruit and crop ripening is reserved in the model code. Chapter 26, fumigation and insecticidal fogging, no significant changes identified. Chapter 27, semiconductor fabrication facilities, no significant changes identified. Chapter 28, lumber yards and agro-industrial solid biomass and woodworking facilities, no significant changes identified. Chapter 29, manufacture of organic coatings, no significant changes identified. Chapter 30, industrial ovens, no significant changes identified. Chapter 31, tents, temporary special event structures and other membrane structures. Section 3106, inflatable amusement devices as a whole section needs further review and potential amendment. Chapter 32, high piled combustible storage, no significant changes identified. Chapter 33, fire safety during construction and demolition, no significant changes identified. Chapter 34, tire rebuilding and tire storage, no significant changes identified. Chapter 35, welding and other hot work, no significant changes identified. Chapter 36, marinas, no significant changes identified. Chapter 37, combustible fibers, no significant changes identified. Chapter 38, higher education laboratories, no significant changes identified. Chapter 39, processing and extracting facilities, section 3901.1 scope. The recommendation for an amendment and consideration is to determine if an exception is acceptable for the greenhouses. An additional review is needed. Section 3905.3, ventilation, with the determine if an exception should be modified to include approved by the fire code official for 104.2.3. An additional review is needed. Chapter 40, storage of distilled spirits and wines, section 4004.4, bulk beverage storage areas. Recommend the striking of the term bulk or definition of the term. A proposal would be needed on that one. Chapter 41, temporary heating and cooking operations. Section 4101.1, general. The proposal will be needed to define the term temporary. May need a definition section added or utilized and insert / adopt 3103.4 use period. Temporary tents, air supported, air inflated, or tension membrane structures shall not be erected for a period of more than 180 days within a 12-month period on a single premises or dependent on the authority having jurisdiction. Section 4101.8, refueling of flammable and combustible liquid fueled equipment. Recommend adding the term refueling and 20 feet. This is consistent with 3108.13.3, refueling requirements from tents or membrane structures. Section 4101.9, cooking operations, with the recommendation to add a number 4, appropriate clearance from combustible emission sources shall be approved by the fire code official. Section 4104.2, open flame cooking devices, has been moved from section 308.1.4. It was not adopted when it was located there, and it needs to remain not adopted in the new location. Section 4104.4, cooking operations. Proposes to add a new number 3, number 4. Number 3 is a Class K portable fire extinguisher is readily available. Number 4 be a 3-foot clearance is maintained from cooking operations and combustibles. Section 4105.1.2, power supply, adding the term and approved and listed to that sentence. Section 4106.4.2, fire protection systems and devices. Recommend adding the fire extinguisher section for 906. Section 4106.4.3.1, LP gas systems. Recommend removing this section as not adopted. Section 4106.4.3.3, annual leakage test. Recommend removing this section, and looks like they have a recommendation for changing it. Section 4106.6, solid fuel. Recommend a new amendment to take into consideration solid fuel burning, such as mobile pizza ovens located within the vehicle, or determine if we do not allow these types of food trucks to be in operations. The concern is with discarded smoldering embers. Section 4106.7, oven. Consideration for the installation requirement for wood burning oven, UL 2126 requirements. Chapters 42 through 48 are reserved in the model code. Chapter 49, fixed guideway transit and passenger rail systems, is a section that is all Washington Amendment, no significant changes identified. Chapter 50, hazardous materials, general provisions. With no additional amendments identified as being needed within that chapter. Chapter 51, aerosols, is reserved in the model code. Chapter 52 is reserved in the model code. Chapter 53, compressed gases. We have an amendment in here, but the recommendation is to go with the model code here. Chapter 54, corrosive materials, no significant changes identified. Chapter 55, cryogenic fluids, no significant changes identified. Chapter 56, explosives and fireworks, no significant changes identified. Chapter 57, flammable and combustible liquids, no significant changes identified. Chapter 58, flammable and combustible liquids. With no additional amendments identified as being needed. Chapter 59, flammable solids, no significant changes identified. Chapter 60, highly toxic and toxic materials, no significant changes identified. Chapter 61, liquefied petroleum gases, no significant changes identified. Chapter 62, organic peroxides, no significant changes identified. Chapter 63, oxidizers, oxidizing gases and oxidizing cryogenic fluids. No significant changes identified. Chapter 64, pyrophoric materials. No significant changes identified. Chapter 65, trioxylin cellulose nitrate plastics. No significant changes identified. Chapter 66, unstable reactive materials. No significant changes identified. Chapter 67, water reactive solids and liquids, no significant changes identified. Chapter 68 through 79 are reserved in the model code. Chapter 80, reference standards. In the NFPA 13 section called out for an additional amendment. The amendment to remove the requirements for sprinklers and hydraulic elevator pits. The NFPA is in the process of revising the 2025 edition of the reference standard and will be removing the elevator pit sprinkler requirement. And that concludes the 2024 International Fire Code Significant Changes Report.
Thank you, Dustin. Any comments or questions? Ben?
Yeah, I just went back and checked. So chapter 6, it wasn't flagged for any significant changes. However, as part of the A2L refrigerants stuff that we looked at during the mechanical code section, that of course had some changes within chapter 6 of this section. I don't know if we want to flag those changes as just model code changes. I'm guessing the tag hasn't reviewed them for IFC though. So I know we looked at those before, but I don't know if any additional action is needed. The bulk of them is within the mechanical code as in terms of changes, so.
Yeah, let's flag that to compare the two codes.
Okay.
Public comments?
We have a public comment from the BIAW representative, Patrick Hinks.
Patrick, go ahead.
Patrick Hanks here with Building Industry Association of Washington, for the record. Just want to say thanks again to the staff, TAG, and committee members for going through this. We just have one issue that we want to flag. We are concerned that the scope of the provision for natural disasters in section 104.2.4.2 is too broad and lacks clear guidelines and guardrails. During our review of this provision, we'd like to know more about the potential use cases that would necessitate the section. We're unsure how COVID or any other pandemic would apply to this provision for natural disasters. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the report.
So moved. This Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Second, Peter.
Thank you, Pete. There's been a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the passing report signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, good work, Dustin, for getting through all this.
Thank you.
That brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, which is an opinion request from the city of Bellevue and Everett.
This one was reviewed at the committee level, and the committee voted to present it to the council as an opportunity to also give the public time to potentially review this and have additional comment on it in here. So we have the opinion here. I do have the Word document, so if we want to change anything in this, I can work this document here today.
Okay. Do you want us to give us, there's a lot of questions and answers, but I think it all boils down to one thing, and that was existing spaces are added within was really the language that drove all our responses. Is that correct?
Yes. So the main kind of consideration is in our state amendment, the for 302.3 two-family dwellings, the exception number 2 to that section states where an accessory dwelling unit is added within an existing single-family residence to create two-family dwelling. Fire rated separations between the accessory dwelling unit and the primary dwelling unit is not required. The questions came, if we're doing an addition onto a building, if the separation is required. And that was mainly what we had going on there. And we got some hands up, and it looks like
Okay.
Roger was first.
Yep, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, as chair of the BFRW committee, I wanted to let the whole council know that there was a significant discussion at the committee meeting about all of the answers and all of the questions. At the end of the conversation, there was, I believe, unanimous support for to approve all of the answers, but felt like it was important for the full council to have the opportunity to weigh in. 2 comments about our considerations. Certainly the need in the state of Washington to add dwelling units. So making this functional and easy to incorporate was important, but also maintaining life safety. So in reviewing these, we are having to weigh those two ideas. And there also, just for everybody's information, there was significant discussion about whether the descriptor family is appropriate or not, single family and 2 family, or whether there should just be dwelling units. We, at the end of the day, decided that was a bigger question within the code and within the amendment, and not really got in. Really outside of the purview of whether or not we approve these answers. So just 2 general topics of discussion that we had as a BFRW committee.
Yep. Thank you, Roger. Angela?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that I guess during last week's meeting, I had a blank out moment or something, because the question about the share spaces, the entrances, laundry facilities and things. There is actually a state amendment, and it's section R 302.3.5 that specifically addresses that as them needing to be separated from both of the from both the dwelling units. So that's already, there is a state amendment in there, so it's not actually up to the designer. If those are shared spaces, that section applies.
So do we need to modify that?
Yeah.
4th answer then?
Yeah.
Okay. Dustin, are you clear on that?
Yes, I'm clear on that. I'm just gotta read which, don't remember which
Angela, which question was that?
Sorry, it's the one where the arrow is with the shared spaces, the entrances, laundry facilities. It's the question of where that separation should be. And it should refer to section R 302.3.5.
Number question.
Yes. Does just placing the actual code section in here work for an answer to this question for the group here?
I believe so. Okay. Anybody else have any modifications to the document? Senator Wilson?
Not sure if it's a modification. I just want to know what the thinking was here on the second question. So basically, if you're building an ADU at the same time that you're building a home, you have to have the the 1 hour fire resistance rating in, between the two, right? Not just the smoke alarms being attached, or so when one smoke alarm goes off, the other one does as well. But if you're building if you're building a home or you built the home and, you know, a month later, you decide to build the ADU, or 5 years later, you build the ADU. Now you don't have to have that 1 hour fire resistant rating between the two. But you could have a home that is 50 years old, and then you add the ADU and you're not connecting the fire resistant walls, right? Codes back 50 years ago were quite different. So what I'm trying to understand here is, if you're building the new home and you're building the ADU at the same time, now you're requiring one extra step for more fire resistance rating between, and so more expense in the product that you're having to put between the walls or between the two units, rather than not being required to do that when you do it afterwards. So a builder could go in and build a home, and then the day after the house is done, he goes in and starts building the ADU. You've got two different requirements here. Can you help me with the thought process here?
Yeah, I'm gonna call on Angela first because she had some good comments at this last time, then Mike, I think, Jill.
So this is a Washington state amendment. This is nowhere in the base code at all. But it's because it was to allow for homeowners to, I think the general thought behind it when it went in was to be able to add an ADU. It's usually in their existing basement or changing the garage over. And when you do that after construction is complete, adding that 1 hour is an actual hardship. If it's in the basement, you usually can't do it because you can't do a drop ceiling. You won't have headroom. The garage, you'd have to, you know, both sides of the wall have to be open, things like that. And so I think in the beginning, when this was in here, it was to make it easier for it. Actually, when this went in originally, it also had a requirement that the owner of the house, the main house, had to actually occupy one of the dwelling units. So it wasn't intended for these to, say, be condoized and sold off like they are now and things like that. It was to make it easier to add accessory dwelling units. Whereas if it's new construction, it's not a huge cost and it's not hard to add your fire. It's basically switching to type X JIP is, for the most part, from what I understand. So that's where kind of the intent was. It has morphed into something else, but I won't get into that.
Micah?
Thanks. Angela's spot on with that. The intent behind this obviously is to make the existing dwelling units kind of a softer approach, an easier approach to adding these ADUs within the existing footprint of the structure. When you're adding on to the exterior, you know, it is a lot easier to provide that separation. And when we're talking about dwelling unit separation, that's a long-standing item. This is not something new. This is not something specific to Washington. Your two-family dwelling unit separation has been in the code for a really, really long time. And again, the ADU is something new. I'm not sure if folks know accessory dwelling units really is a technical land use term. Within the building code and residential code, a dwelling unit's a dwelling unit. When we talk about having multiple dwelling units, we talk about, oh, we're going to call it accessory, but there's no answer to what is an accessory to. So this is something that is specific to Washington, where we talk about accessory dwelling units in the code, but it is just a dwelling unit. We're allowing these within an existing residence and softening that approach to where it can be done more often by not having to provide those separations, which is really cost prohibitive in putting these in. So thank you.
Can I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
So, okay, so I get that, but Micah, you just said within. So ADUs do not have to be within the home. They can actually be accessory, right? It's outside of the home or attached through a breezeway where it can just be a bedroom. So I'm trying to, I get the interior and what Angela said about the interior, but what about when you're adding an exterior, a new building, a new room outside of the home?
You would need to meet this fire separation requirements or the rated separation requirements.
Right, but not with the 1 hour fire resistant rating. Because it's
Yes.
additional or.
It would have to be equivalent to that 1 hour. Sometimes you're going to achieve that with 2 exterior walls. So it's not really an added cost. If you're attaching it directly to one other dwelling unit now with that using a common wall, then you may have to make some minor modifications there. And again, Angela and others may have more input on that than me, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, no, what we're talking about, this section is specific that if you're using existing space within the house, and that's kind of where some of the debate has come up. What if you do a small addition onto the house to sort of, add an extra room or whatever? But this exception says that if it's added within an existing single family, and I can speak for my jurisdiction, is that it has to be 100% within the existing envelope in order to use this. So that's just with that. But I think Chell probably has some more input from his point.
Okay, I think I've got it. Thank you.
Okay. I was just going to add a couple of things. One is the zoning code often distinguishes between an accessory dwelling unit and a detached accessory dwelling unit. A DADU is one that is not attached to the house. It's on a, far enough away that it doesn't have to be connected via the zoning or the building code. And then there's an attached accessory dwelling unit, which is kind of what this is. It's within an existing building. And the other thing is that just from a general perspective, that there's a bunch of code exceptions for existing buildings, chapter 5 in the energy code and an existing building code that basically make it so it's easier, so you don't have to upgrade the whole building in order to continue to use space or modify the space slightly. And so there's a whole lot of code pieces that make it easier to modify an existing building than to build a new building, because with a new building you get lots of opportunities to do ADA correctly, to do all the fire and life safety things that make Washingtonians safe. With existing buildings, sometimes those things are cost prohibitive to get to 100%, but you often have to do a little bit less in an existing building, so that we don't make reusing existing buildings cost prohibitive.
Is your hand still up, or you have a further comment?
Something else, was that you asking me?
Yeah, your hand's still up.
Yeah, I just want to make 2 more comments. In the answer to number 2, if you want to be accurate, or even in question 2, it is 1 family dwelling. That is the title of the code, not single family. So if you want to shift that throughout this response, that may be more accurate. And then I want to point out that in question 5 and answer 5, the additional dwelling units are allowed, even more than 3. You just have to, the answer is correct. You'd have to design it like a townhouse, which requires that unit separation. So again, item or answer 2 is not prohibiting you from having more than 2 units or building additional attached units. You just have to meet the requirements of the townhouse provisions for that separation in answer 5. So multiple parts here, they all kind of tie together. Thanks.
Mike, did you see any modifications to the responses that are necessary?
No, I agree with the group that this mostly covers it. I mean, we could get further into it even on question 5. I think some of that kind of depends on the design and what you want to do. I guess some of that comes out of the question. If you have an ADU that becomes the structure becomes a 2-family dwelling, it's no longer an ADU, it's just a 2-family dwelling. So, I mean, so there's some nuances, but I think overall it's covered. Thanks for allowing input.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Micah. That input is valuable for me also. I'm in agreement with these and was at the committee level, but really wanted to have the council conversation on this. I'll support this today. I think what we need, the nuance here we're pulling out is we need to be careful, especially where we're going in the IRC. Now that we're mandated to incorporate up to 4 to 6 units, I believe, in the IRC, we're going to have to really be careful about terminology and also when these types of exceptions are allowed. You know, take Spokane, for example, as the development code has moved in ahead of, I say, the building code. The term ADU really becomes less relevant when there aren't we don't have limitations on the number of units per density or per parcel anymore. We have to be clear that here we're talking about 2 units. Otherwise, it gets into a different definition of the townhome, like Micah said, or even in different appraisal and so forth. So I think this is fine. Just we need to be future proof to where we're going, and maybe that's the opportunity to clean it up when we address this in the IRC. So, thank you, everyone.
Yep, Angela.
Yeah, kind of to go along with what Todd was saying about kind of cleaning this up is I was looking through the code, you know, yesterday and stuff, just reviewing all these sections. And I did a search through the entire code, and the only spot where accessory dwelling unit is actually used is in this state amendment. And so I do think that when we get to the IRC tag, we do need to do a cleanup on this to remove that word accessory, because again, in this code, a dwelling unit is a dwelling unit. The accessory dwelling unit, it's not accessory to anything when it comes to the actual construction codes. The zoning codes, yes, they're the land use, but not ours. So that's just something I'd like to see happen, but this isn't the place for it. Thanks.
Okay. I'm calling you next, Senator Wilson. Dustin, second line, question 2, you can change that single family to 1 family.
Gotcha.
Senator Wilson.
Okay, so I'm hearing all of you. I'm just seeing when you actually look up the definition of an ADU, it is a small self-contained residential unit located on the same lot as an existing single-family home. So it doesn't make it a 2-family home. It's a self-contained residential unit, which then would have a separate address. So that would be an accessory to your original home. Right? So I think you're going to have to be careful about changing language or taking out accessory dwelling unit, because it is, I mean, we've worked off of ADUs now for quite some time. So I don't know if you're trying to make a dwelling unit or an accessory dwelling unit, you know, I mean, if I'm building it in my basement, I'm not calling that an ADU. I'm calling that a remodel of my basement. So I wouldn't call that an ADU. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is how so anyway.
Yeah, I think
we don't have to get any more into the weeds. I just had these questions here. It just didn't seem logical to me that an old building didn't have to have that separation, the fire resistant rating separation, but the new building did. That didn't quite have much logic to me here.
And I think there's 2 things here. One, we're only addressing it, ADUs within an existing structure,
right?
Not detached. And then secondly, you know, when you're building a new structure, you have ready opportunity to make that fire separation much more economically than to try to modify something that's say 50 years old. So, Angela, do you have more?
Yes. So just to be clear, the definition that Senator Wilson was just referring to is not in the construction codes. That is not a defined term within these codes. That term would be, I believe, must be in another one of a legislature or something as far as defining that. And that is a land development term. So it is not a recognized that definition is not recognized by this code and does not have anything to do with it, basically. So that's just that's one thing to try to kind of keep straight, is the difference between the zoning or development codes and the building code and the construction codes. So that's why accessory doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have the same meaning between the two.
I'm going to call on Krista and then Micah.
So Damon, this is Dustin. I had Krista raise her hand for me. We have Patrick Hank with BIW who'd like to have a comment on this as well.
Okay, go ahead, Pat.
Patrick Hanks with the Building Industry Association of Washington. Just want to say thank you to the committee for sending this to the council for some more public comment. I double checked with folks on my team, and we don't have any issues with the draft opinion. I just want to say thank you to the committee and council for trying to make it less cost prohibitive to put in ADUs and make sure that the language is consistent throughout the question and the answers with the code. So thank you.
Thank you. Micah.
Thanks. One last thing to keep in mind, this will have to be updated based on the 2024 residential code. I believe Angela mentioned that. There are several additions in section 302.3 that cover two-family dwellings, dwelling unit separation, fire resistance rating. They also now cover vertically stacked dwelling units in the 2024 code coming up for the residential portion in group 2. So this, again, this is the answer for the 2021 code, but this should shift or will shift for the 2024 code based on some of those new model code provisions if we decide to adopt them. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Wilson.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, accessory dwelling unit is identified or defined in the law. So it is RCW 36.70A.696, which does say an accessory dwelling unit means a dwelling unit located on the same lot as a single family housing unit, duplex, triplex, townhome, or other housing unit. Then it goes into attached accessory dwelling unit, and then there's also a detached accessory dwelling unit, but it is defined, which is what we work off of as a legislature.
Perfect. Okay. Roger.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that. I think that therein lies part of the question is the legislature does have it defined. The building code is the building code. People go to the building code when they are building a building. They don't necessarily go into all of the laws. So it is defined in the, according to the legislature, it is not in the building codes right now. And I think, as a number of us have talked about, it is, there are questions. It is not completely clear. The committee at the end of the day felt like the answers that we provided to these specific questions for the 2021 code were appropriate. Not saying that there doesn't need to be additional, definitions added or terminology modified to make sure that it is more clear moving forward in the building code, not just in the, for the legislature.
Okay. Todd?
Yeah, I think just to reassure everyone, I think everyone's right. We're calling out some of these this cleanup that has to happen because we've been for 40 some years since the Fair Housing Act still calling things like we can regulate or enforce by familiar status when we can't. So there's just things that I was surprised spending a lot of time in development code where we did clean them up in Spokane, realizing the building life safety codes are way behind on this cleanup. So I think we'll get there. Maybe now is not the time, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. And as long as we kind of understand the intent of this for now, as Micah said, we get to another swing at it in less than a year. So thank you.
Okay. Any further comments on the response? Just for formatting's sake, looks like there might be an extra carriage return after answer 1. There you go. Okay. I would entertain a motion to release this opinion to the requesters.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we publish these opinions as modified today and as shown on the screen.
Second, Angela.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, opinion is issued. That, I believe, brings us to the end of the agenda. Anything for the good of the order? Okay, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.